Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the fifth office hour sessions for that course I'm doing online, memoQuickies resource camp. But everybody's welcome to these talks, whether they are memoQ users or not, whether they're enrolled in the course or not. It's basically just public education and discussion of what I hope are some useful issues for people in the language services sector. Today, we're going to focus a little bit on segmentation. Segmentation in memoQ, of course, but some more general issues related to segmentation that might be usable for people who work with other platforms. As I've discussed in earlier talks, some of the things that I do for memoQ, like the regular expressions that go into the Regex Expressions Assistant library. These can be exported from memoQ in various forms and made available for use in Trados Studio, in Phrase, WordFast, and Cafetron, and in any of these other mini-cat tools that also make use of regular expressions. All of the facilities for doing that are in the course unit for the Regex Assistant, in the sections for translating and exporting and so forth. There are several possibilities there. Okay, so today we're going to take a look at segmentation in general and possibly some ways of analyzing your historical data and figuring out why your segmentation is bad. One of the reasons I was so late in announcing this week's talk is I began to think a little bit about how I wanted to approach the subject in a public presentation like this. And obviously I wanted to go beyond just showing people how to import and apply the two improved segmentation rule sets that I use most frequently, one for German source texts and another for English source texts, because most of you are not necessarily working with German or English as your main source. You might be working with Italian, you might be working with French, Russian, Romanian, all the myriad languages of the world. And so I thought it would be useful to provide some guidance on how you would be able to have a look at your own working data or perhaps some public corpora in order to determine how good or how bad the segmentation rules are that you're working with right now, so you can decide for yourself whether this is even a relevant issue for you to address. My personal experience through some 23 years of commercial translation right now, working with God knows how many companies, hundreds of them over that time, bad segmentation seems to be one of the biggest time wasters out there, both for the translators who have to cope with it, and in cases where they're given files where they have no possibilities of repairing the segmentation. They're trying to find appropriate verbal backflips and flaming hoops to jump through in order to make the translations work and not create too much garbage in the translation memory. Or when working with somewhat more advanced translation environment tools like memoQ or the newer Trados Studio, they may have sometimes the ability to adjust bad segmentation, but not always. And then if the translators don't deal with this very often, the reviewers have additional time wasted. There are a lot of mistakes created in the translations due to bad segmentation. This is also, of course, a headache for project managers and customers. Basically, everybody suffers from this. And I personally have had projects where I spend hours resegmenting a single document. I'm sure some of you can relate to this experience. It's not fun. And so if we can develop some general strategies for improving our segmentation, I think this is going to waste a lot less time for all of us. But by the end of this talk, you will have some specific pointers to different ways to address that. as I mentioned, this is part of the memoQuickies Resource Camp course, which some of you are enrolled in. But everybody is welcome to these talks, regardless of your enrollment status. So if you're not interested in the course or whatever, that's cool. You're welcome to participate fully in these discussions and take whatever public resources I've made available. I've got our little icon collection here. We started off, of course, talking about memoQ auto-translation rules. Auto-translation rules of interest continue to be added to the course and will be added throughout the course. So if you noticed that some unit you thought you had completed before is no longer completed, I've probably gone back, edited the explanations, maybe added some more resources, which may or may not be of interest to you to download, but you're welcome to do so. From auto-translation rules, we moved on to the memoQ Regex Assistant, which is a library tool, which was added to memoQ in its current form in version 9.9, and which has proved to be one of the most effective things to be added to memoQ in many years for allowing you to do a lot of sophisticated filtering, find and replace operations, enhance your QA, and so forth, using libraries of regular expressions, which are stored using plain language descriptions, labels, and names in whatever language you choose to work with. So with this kind of a library, you are not messing around with obscure regex syntax, but instead just looking for the solution you need, presumably in your ordinary preferred working language, and then applying it. And there's little or no tweaking of syntax involved in most cases. Now, this Regex Assistant library is very relevant to what we will be talking about today on segmentation, because I am distributing some Regex libraries that are relevant to looking at possible segmentation issues in your own data or in some test data that you can download from this course. And I've got the little icon for that. I always thought the thing was an anchor for years with my bad eyesight. And it wasn't until I started blowing it up that I realized it was a pair of scissors cutting something. Couldn't understand for more than 10 years of using memoQ why they chose an anchor for their icon. It just goes to show that iconic communication and bad eyesight do not mix well. So anyway, so for our talk today on segmentation, I have a number of points that I would like to cover, which I have written down here and will refer to a couple of times just to make sure I'm not leaving anything out. I'm going to take a quick look through the current course structure and just show you what has been added. I've actually got quite a few lessons that will be added to that section, but which are not in the form that I want to deliver them right now, because I was putting a lot of time into preparing test data. Because really, when you're working on segmentation problems or trying to understand how good or how bad your current segmentation is, data quantity is really important. And so I've been trying to prepare some considerable resources drawn from the EU DGT sample data that I put into the course to make it easier for some of you to test these things out yourself and maybe identify some areas of improvement that I have not yet found myself. We're going to take a quick look also at the magnitude of impact that good segmentation rules can have in a project. And for that, I took one of the rules that I distribute in this course, my personal German rule set, which was improved in collaboration with more than a dozen colleagues for about a dozen years. I took that segmentation data set and I imported a sample file drawn from EU data. And So I imported it with my own segmentation rule set. And then I imported the same data using memoQ's default segmentation rules. And we're just going to take a quick look at that and see if there are any differences. One thing that I really want to emphasize today is some of the test data that we have available in this course, which this is public data. I've just massaged it a bit to put it in forms that are a little easier for all of you to work with. So this can be freely downloaded. It can be used for your own testing, demonstration. If you teach, you can use it freely in teaching without having to worry about any kind of confidentiality issues. It's all EU legislation, so it's in the public domain. Also, even though I have prepared this data in a lot of different formats, it may be of interest to you or to colleagues of yours in different language combinations, in different directions than I prepared, with different languages than I prepared. All of this can be, you can prepare your own sets. Let's say if you need Bulgarian to Polish for some reason, okay, you can prepare this with the data that I've made available in the course. And so I describe in one section how to go about step by step preparing your own custom data from this EU archive that I've put up there for you to download conveniently. So if the combinations you see do not speak to you, but you still want some combination of European data, you can manufacture it from what's provided here. Okay, and the methods for, we're going to talk about methods for identifying segmentation issues. That's where the Regex Assistant libraries come in. And as I say, there are a couple of libraries. I think they are public access, but I'll check while we're going through the course just to make sure. And these will help you quickly identify any issues in your own data. Also, I'll probably be making a lot of comments about the current state of segmentation in memoQ. One thing I will just mention right now, and I probably won't mention again, but it's worth taking note of. There is a possibility of exchanging segmentation rules between translation tools. Now, I have yet to encounter anybody who can give me a clear answer on how well this works. And for various reasons, I have not done extensive testing on this for at least 15 years. I looked at some of this in, I don't know, around 2005 or something like that. So 18 years ago when I first discovered it. But I haven't been doing a lot of interoperability work in recent years. So I cannot tell you if things have improved or gotten worse or remained the same in the 18 years or so since I looked at this last. However, if you are an individual who works with multiple platforms, for example, memoQ and Trados Studio, or memoQ and Cafe Tran Espresso, or something like that, you might want to look into something called SRX. SRX stands for, I believe, Segmentation Rules Exchange. It is an XML-based transfer system, I guess you could call it, for taking segmentation rules from one environment and making them available in the other. I think in some cases there might be some loss of functionality in migration, but I cannot say exactly what it is. If this is of interest to you, you'll have to test it out yourself. But when you open up your memoQ segmentation rules to look at them and edit them, you will find a button that allows you to export your segmentation rules, or mine, if you imported my rules, to SRX. And this SRX file can then be read in Trados, I think in WordFast, certainly in Cafe Tran Espresso, and other environments. So if you achieve significant improvements in your segmentation in the memoQ environment, it may be possible to share some, perhaps even all, of those improvements with another platform of interest to you or your colleagues. So that is worth noting. And you can look into the subject of SRX on Wikipedia and the various manuals for the software that you use and so forth. Some of them discuss it to a greater extent than others, but you will find information out there. And I do believe that this is a topic that could be of considerable value to some of you. Okay, so that's enough said on that particular subject matter. This is some of the sample data that is being made available. I'll show you in more detail in a minute. This is my course editing environment. I've been uploading for much of the morning over my crappy low bandwidth. So segmentation rules. Yeah, there's only 2 points there right now, which is very little compared to what I've got in some of the previous units. I say I've got another half dozen lessons for that I'm going to be uploading very soon. But before I did that, I wanted to complete the preparation of the test data as well as conduct a few tests, because these methods that I'm going to show you are very new. I made them up within the last week. I don't remember ever seeing anybody in our professional world explaining anything like this before. Surely at some localization conference in some dark little cubbyhole filled with nerds, something like this was discussed, but not really as a general topic for all of us. Okay, so yeah, my usual long verbiage talking about what a headache bad segmentation can be. And sure enough, here in this section, I have a zip file that contains my personal segmentation rules that I use for German, which are probably the best German segmentation rules that you will ever find if you work with German source texts. If anybody can show me segmentation rules out there that will outperform these with the test data that I've got, I'd love to see them. But there's a lot of people put a lot of time into this over the years. This thing is gold. Okay, if I had had something like this 20 years ago, I would have saved, God, I don't know, so many hundreds of hours of wasted time, and I'm just one person. So this file right here, if it is implemented at some big high volume translation department in some company or in an LSP that does a lot of work with German, I promise it will save hundreds, if not thousands of hours of wasted time in a year. So this is gold. If you download it, please share it widely, because bad segmentation is a headache for all of us. And the farther this resource gets shared, the less general suffering there is out there in the profession. And there's enough suffering without dealing with the segmentation matters. So please, if you have this and you like it, give it away to anybody who might be able to use it. There will be updates coming later, but believe me, this file alone, which is 4 years old, will save you a lot of trouble. There are also some English rules for people who work with English source texts. And these rules are much less developed than the German rules. However, they have a lot more segmentation exceptions, which I drew from a careful examination and testing of a list of abbreviations in the Oxford English Dictionary some years ago, as well as adding a little bit of code to correct some other problems. But because I do not work with English source texts myself, I don't have the same level of investment in these rules that I have in the German rules, but they're probably still better than whatever you're working with if English is your source language. And they can be brought to the same level as the German rules very quickly using some of the analysis techniques that we will discuss today. Okay, and so anyway, that's it. There's these two rule sets, and they could be of interest, but many of you have different source languages. So that's why the next unit that I added here is talking about identifying where you may have some segmentation issues. Now, this can be done if you're a project manager, for example, working at an LSP. and you just finished a big project with your team, or you're in the middle of the project with your team, and they are complaining bitterly about the terrible segmentation and how much of their time is being wasted because of this and so forth. And you tell them, oh, please send me some examples. And they call you all kinds of bad names and say, excuse me, but with the ridiculous deadline that has been imposed, I don't have time to give you the examples. I just fixed them and moved on. Okay, well, what's a PM to do? Or, let's say that you've gone through in your own work, okay, without having to deal with any onerous LSPs that don't know how to segment. Okay, but you've had some documents where that has really been a problem, but that was maybe months or years ago that you saw the worst of it. And you just kind of fixed it and got on with things because you were very busy. You were under the time pressure that so many people are. Well, I'm going to talk about how you can go and look back at your historical data. That historical data could have been a document completed an hour ago. Okay, so you just go in and do some quick filtering and look for points that you might have fixed. Or you can take your old translation memories, and in memoQ at least, you can export a TMX from your translation memory, and that TMX can be imported into the memoQ working grid as a translation document. Now, why would you want to do something like that? Well, when a TMX file is in the working grid of memoQ or other programs, if they allow you to do that, it's just XML, so you can probably tweak an XML filter in some other environment and do exactly the same thing. But once it's there in the working environment, all of your filtering and search and replace capabilities and so forth can be brought to bear. And TM editors in the various CAT tools do not necessarily have those capabilities. So you can export your big bad old TMs and then bring them in as so-called translation documents in order to take a more careful look at the data and learn things about it. Things like segmentation, problems that weren't fixed, okay, and still exist and maybe need to be addressed for the future, or stuff that you might have actually fixed while you were working. And if you want to make a test document in order to see whether the stuff will segment correctly with whatever rules you're now using or whatever rules you're developing, you can copy those sentences that are identified with some of the tools that I'm sharing and paste them into a text document, and then just import it like it's a translation document and see if the segmentation is right. So this is a quick way to prepare some usable test data for whatever languages you work with. I think in Lawrence's case, we're talking Italian and French, right? I have that data you sent me. I'll be looking at it in my copious free time on this holiday or shortly thereafter. Okay, so what's going on with that? Well, I've got an explanation here. Oh, here we got some scary regex. Oh my God. Okay, this is one of the first regexes that I developed. You don't even need, I actually explain what all that garbage means. Okay, if you're into that, you can read the explanation, but you don't actually have to, because farther down, okay, here I'm showing an example, just a screenshot that I took when I went back and looked at my 20-year TM. It's actually a TM. It goes back to the year 2000 when I started doing commercial translation. And I have put most of my work over the course of the last 23 years into that TM, at least half of it. Okay, it's pretty big. Okay, and here are some places in some old data where the segmentation was not correct for various reasons. Okay, and in fact, here you can see you've got an open parentheses and then an abbreviation, which is typically handled correctly, but memoQ and some other CAT tools out there have a defect in the regex that they wrote to handle the segmentation. And so even when you tell it what abbreviations to ignore, very often, if those abbreviations occur immediately inside of some kind of a parenthetical structure, like actual parentheses or brackets, square brackets, curly brackets, or quote marks, quotation marks in any language, all of these things are parenthetical structures because they enclose some text on both sides. And very, very often, segmentation exceptions, like CA period here, it's all over the place, that occur inside of those things, fail. As you know, they would normally work if that CA were in the middle of the text, or that BSP that you see in the second visible segment. If those were in the middle of the text without those parentheses, okay, I wouldn't be breaking the sentence there. But because this bad regex has been making the rounds among the developers creating segmentation rules for a couple of decades now, most of the cat tools I've seen will get that wrong. Okay, now they're getting it wrong here in German, but pick your favorite language and you'll probably find lots and lots of similar cases where you have an abbreviation immediately after a left parenthetical structure, quote marks, parentheses, whatever. And it's going to screw your segmentation up right there. And you know, I have lost track of the number of times some frustrated colleague has asked me why their segmentation isn't working, because they know that they put that into their exceptions list. And they even send me screenshots of their exceptions list, or they send me copies of their segmentation rules. But what they don't know is that they're doomed. Okay, their segmentation will not work. The workarounds they try to create to fix this problem often do not work. They just end up trashing the exceptions list with their abbreviations, and everybody comes out frustrated. I actually have code that I give away. I'm giving it away in the workshop series I did earlier this year that show you how to fix that in memoQ. But the same fix can be applied in any other cat tool that allows you to edit the segmentation rules, because it's basically the same mistake that's being made. And that will be made available in an actual lesson in the course that will show you step by step in text and video how to fix those problems, because they exist in every single memoQ default segmentation rule set, every single one of them, without exception. I pointed this problem out over a decade ago, and it still hasn't been fixed. But you can fix it yourself in about 5 minutes with the instructions that will be provided later. Not in today's lecture. I've actually written them and published them in a couple places, but I'm going to go through and recast it, make some video to back it up, and show a couple of examples for languages I'm not typically working with. Because with the new methods I developed, I can actually make good test data without asking people to give it to me. So anyway, so we scroll further down on this page, and what do we find? We find a regex library, okay, at the bottom of this page, which I gotta check. I think this is public, okay, I think. If not, I can make it public. But anyway, there is a library here in a zip file. If you download that zip file and you unpack it and you import it into your Regex Assistant library in memoQ, you will have some basic tools that will describe how to find these bad places in your TMs or in your documents where maybe the segmentation is going to get a little bit weird. Now, let me show you in memoQ what that looks like. First thing you do in your memoQ grid is you click the little gear wheel here, you turn on regex, as I've already done, and then these little buttons will show up. Okay, so I'm going to click that. It will open my Regex Assistant library. And when you import the library that I'm giving you, you will have these same things that will show up. Whoops, if I spell things correctly, it will show up. type in the word segmentation. Did I spell that correct? Yeah, you see, here are a bunch of different segmentation rules that are in that rule set that I am distributing to you. There will be more later, but this is my current working set. Yeah, actually here, where it says fix right parenthetical element plus proper name, actually that's left. I get left and right mixed up all the time. So you can correct that yourself, or I will correct it in a future distribution. Yeah, left, right, up, down, all these direction things are a little challenging some days. Okay, so screening possible problematic segmentation at segment start. Okay, well, it was also catches some other issues like missing spaces after numbering. Okay, this is just some remarks I made to myself, and I added it to the description, which shows up in pop-ups. So you can see all these things by looking at the tooltips as you go through the menu, or you can edit the library and change all this yourself. Okay, so I'll go ahead and bring this up. Yeah, that's some scary looking regex. Good thing I don't need to know regex to use this stuff. Okay, I'm going to insert it into the source there. And let me get my little regex window out of the way here. All right, we click on that. And now there are about 2.5 million words in this little resource that I'm using here. So it might be kind of slow on some of your computers. This is my slowest, worst computers. But hey, filtering 2.5 million words was pretty damn quick right there. Okay, so now here, for example, in this segment, okay, we saw elsewhere that this was not segmented correctly. I probably fixed that manually. Okay, but it's showing me something that maybe I want to copy that and paste it into a separate text file and use it in a text thing. Okay, here I see this AB small l period thing. Okay, this is actually a reference to a European law journal that gets cited a lot. This is the German designation for Amtsblatt. Yeah, that's an abbreviation that is not in the standard list, so that always fails. In fact, let's see. Oh, how many hits did I get here? Down at the bottom, it says that I have 2,675 things that it found in this document. Okay, so there's that number of potential places that are in trouble. We've got a segmentation exception here. So I found out of 140,000 segments or so in this, I found 2,675 places that could possibly have some kind of a segmentation issue. Okay, so anyway, so that's how the libraries work. And you will have those libraries when you download them and then import them yourself. Now, I want to show you a small difference. Let's see. Here, I have 2 samples of data from the DGT. Oh, let me close my regex expression. There's my regex assistant here. You don't need to look at this right now. Okay, I have 2 imports of the same text. Okay, you notice that they're the same size. Okay, and I put comments here so I can tell which one is which. So I put my little mouse over here and say, this document has comments. Oh, okay, fine. Okay, what does it say? Okay, this lower one was imported using the memoQ default segmentation rules. All right. And so then this one here will have been imported using my own, yes, version 14.1 of my personal segmentation rules for German. And you may notice that it also has the same size as this, which is a collection of the TMX files. Each of these little TMX files is an individual piece of legislation. And the TMX, as it is distributed by the, I can't pronounce anything in French, the Directorate General for Translation in the EU, the DGT. Each of those files, in theory, has the parallel corpus for all 24 of the official EU languages. So when you import that data into your CAT tool, you can import whatever language pair is of interest to you out of all of the possible combinations of the 24 languages. So you could make a Polish-Italian corpus, for example, if that's important to you to have. Okay, so anyway, but I took the data in German and I just exported it as a text file. Okay, and that's one of the many corpora that I have available to you as test data to work with. And so let's have a look first at what the memoQ default filter does with this data. There are 2.6 million words in this little corpus. So it's just a tiny fraction of the legislation from 1 year. Okay, now we open this up and yeah, there's all the German stuff. It looks to me, oh boy, I can already see an issue here. Right there at the beginning. Oh, no, I'm halfway through, sorry. But I can see problem already right there where the segmentation broke, where it shouldn't have. But let's look down at the bottom is the interesting number. Okay, how many segments do we have? We have 151,592 segments. It says down here at the bottom, there's that many that are empty. Everything here is empty. I just imported the text file. There's no translations. Okay, so just 151,000. Remember that. Well, more than that, 151,592. All right, so let's have a look at the same data imported with my segmentation rules. Open this up, and because it's 2.6 million words and I'm on my slowest computer, takes forever, 143,810. So let's see, that's basically like 8,000, 7,000, almost 8,000 fewer segments. So in this collection of legislation, the improved segmentation rules that I have distributed for German has avoided the need to deal with nearly 8,000 instances of bad segmentation. Okay, so you can do similar tests with your own data to see, how improved segmentation rule or different segmentation rules you've got may perform with a given set of data. So, but this just kind of gave me a benchmark for how good or how bad my rules work with EU data versus the default rules distributed when you install memoQ out of the box. So let's see. So that was kind of interesting data, but how are you going to go about doing your own thing with the data? Well, let's go back and have a look inside of the course structure and all the way at the bottom of the menu. Okay, I've got a section called source language test data, which is just some data of my own. I didn't put a lot in there just yet, but I have a lot of different test data sets that I've used, and the ones that aren't proprietary I'm throwing there. However, down here, I've got this little archive of stuff that I took from last year's upload of DGT data. This is actually just from the first part of it. I think there are 4 parts that were uploaded to DGT last year. And let's have a look and see what is available. And I believe these are public pages. This one is certainly a public page, so anybody can download that. And tells you a little bit about what the background of this data is. Okay, here it just shows you, here's the download link. You can download that archive yourself if you want to. And it has the data in all 24 official EU languages. And I just took a screenshot of one of the files that I opened up. So you can see it. Here it is in Gaelic, British English, Gaelic, German, Danish, Greek, Spanish, and so on. Finnish, French, Italian, Dutch, Portuguese. Okay, so anyway, it's right there. You can just take it, and then you'll have a zip file with all those little TMX files, and you can do whatever you like with them. I take the ones that are of interest and put them in LiveDocs Corpora. Each TMX file is one particular piece of legislation or some other relevant EU document. Okay, but for our purposes, it helps to have the data in a little different form. because each of those TMX that are in that zip file has all 24 languages. Okay, but when we import into STL Trados, it's not STL anymore, Trados Studio, memoQ, other tools, not Deja Vu. Deja Vu will take all 24 languages, I think, but most of them will select some language pair that you specify. And so what I did here in this section, where it says bilingual and monolingual test corpora, English and Portuguese, okay, I'm showing an example of how I took that EU data and created some test corpora for English and Portuguese, which is a lot less data. Okay, so I narrowed it down to just 2 of the 24 languages. And I describe all of the steps here in this numbered list of how I went about creating this data. Okay, and then I've got it downloadable as a memoQ bilingual file. So if you happen to work with English as the source language and Portuguese as the target language, or maybe I did it the other way around. I don't know, I have to look. What was this? Yeah, well, anyway, it doesn't matter. Okay, so I've got all that. And then I also created monolingual corpora of all of that data in Portuguese and in English. So you can download those files and use them for segmentation testing, for example. And they're right there. But, you know, most of you aren't working with Portuguese and English. You're working with other languages. And so I've got this section, more extracted DGT test data. Okay, I put this in a separate section just because I didn't want to clutter up the page where I'm explaining how I went about narrowing down the data to make a particular test set, you know, by having all the other stuff there on the same page. That can be a little confusing. So I just chose English and Portuguese kind of at random, and also because I can read both languages, to show the steps. And so you can apply the steps yourself to whatever language combination is of interest to you. But because a lot of us have the same needs, I went ahead and prepared some bilingual and some monolingual corpora for common languages that many of us work with, and put them here on this page where you can simply download them, because this takes a lot of time. Okay, one of the reasons I haven't got those half dozen extra lessons for segmentation posted in public yet is because I've been preparing this data. I've been testing my screening procedures to make sure that everything is solid and that people should be able to work with this without a lot of suffering. So maybe you'll save your time and you won't have to do any of that manual garbage yourself. Okay, for example, here I've got the same corpus in Danish, in German, in Greek, in French, in Italian. So Lawrence, if you want to check your French and Italian segmentation, if you've got improved rules versus memoQ's default rules, okay, download these huge test files. They'll have about 2.6 million words each, and look and see how many segments you get with the default rules versus your improved rules, or the improved rules that you will have with information that I will be releasing to help you make them. Okay, Spanish and Dutch. Obviously, there are a lot more of them out there, but I only have so much time in a week. Okay, but we have some bilingual files, English to Danish, 2.6 million word corpus. That's useful for testing a lot of stuff, actually. So if you want to just use it to test some of the regex that was distributed in the last unit for the Regex Assistant, my God, 2.6 million word corpus will tell you a lot. English to German, English source to Spanish, English to French, English to Dutch, German to Greek, German to English, German to Italian, German to Portuguese. I'll probably add a few more later. I just didn't have time. Anyway, so all of that, all of those corpora are available. They are all public data. You can download them and do whatever you want with them. Now, subsequent to this talk, I will check quickly to make sure that these pages are public. I intended to make them public, but sometimes I forget to mark the little switch to do that. And then anybody should be able to take this public data, which our taxes have paid for, and you can download it and use it as you please for your own purposes or share it with colleagues freely with no restrictions due to confidentiality. Okay, so
So,
let's see.
sorry, Kevin, can I just jump in? What's the
Yes, of course.
protocol for a question? Do you prefer we do so at the end of the session, offline,
You ask me
or can I
questions
ask
whenever
now?
you like. Anytime is good. Now,
Okay, well, my question is as follows. Segmentation is not a topic that I've really, for whatever reason, had to look into in memoQ very much. So, you showed us a couple of large DGT files, obviously, and then you did a compare. But what, or let's say, how can you assess, or on what basis would you assess a file?
yeah, you know what? That I'm glad that you asked that, Lawrence, because that honestly has been what has occupied my mental space for a significant part of the last week. Because I think, okay, if I'm getting, I'm going to put myself in the shoes of a project manager at an agency who's about to launch a big project with a bunch of translators. And I was just given 200,000 words worth of documents from the customer. Okay, I have to get started as soon as possible. But I'm an educated project manager, and I know that bad segmentation could cause problems for my translators. And so I want to look at this document and assess before I even get them started on the work just how bad the situation is for segmentation. How do I do that? Well, I create the project. I import all the documents. Okay, so let me go into memoQ for just a moment here. Okay, so let's pretend that this folder here is the project with 600 and Christ, I don't know, 658 documents. Yeah, that's what it says. Okay, so here's my project with 658 documents, and as it happens, 2.6 million words. Wow.
Yeah,
Okay, that's a lot of stuff. How do I
yeah.
tell what's going to work there? Well, let's see. Let me move my little Zoom thing here so I can tell what language I'm staring at. This is English. Okay, good. So I've got, what was the source? Oh, this is German, right? I'm in German to English. I lose track sometimes. Okay, so let me close these open things that I've got here. Okay, I made a view as it happens. So I make a view. How do I make the view though? Okay, I select, in this case, the short way, instead of going through and selecting all of the individual files, 671 of them, it's easy to miss something, or I'll do a lot of scrolling. Instead, I just click on the folder. Okay, and everything included in this folder will be included when I go to create a view. Okay, at least one of the selected documents is included in a, yeah, there's already, okay, but you basically just select the folder, you create the view. I've already done that, which is the reason it's griping at me right now. Okay, and so here's the view right there with my 2.6 million words. All right, so I've got my big file there. You got your big file that you're going to translate for your customer, and you want to see where the potential issues are. Okay, and or maybe this is a post-editing job. Yeah, looks like a post-editing job to me. Sure. Okay, so I turn on my regex. Okay, and here in the source, because if this is a new job, there's nothing in the target to look at. So we'd typically be looking at the source. I'm going to bring up my regex library. And my regex library will have those commands that I imported from the little library extract that I'm distributing on that page. So you can go in here in your regex library and type segmentation. Okay. Screening possible problematic. Okay. So All right, there's several different commands here which will do different things, but let's go ahead and say possible segmentation issue. If okay, well, let's see. I'll just put this one in and see what it does. Okay, so I insert it in the filter. And now, mind you, all of these commands are fairly new and they are still being refined. I came up with this concept within the last week, and I've been testing it in different configurations. And, I started testing it without dealing with the left parentheses issue. And then I added the left parentheses issue. So there are several different versions here. This thing will be refined several times more in the course of the next week, probably. In any suggestion, and I'm also sharing it with colleagues like Mark Pavlich, who hadn't given a lot of thought to it either, I think, before. And anyway, so we've got this, and we click the filter button. Okay. And so it's identifying possible problems. Okay. Now here, I mean, this file you're looking at right here was made from the aligned and corrected DGT data. This is their pre-aligned stuff. But if I'm doing this on one of the monolingual documents, like,
Yeah.
Where is it? Here. One of these. Okay, these are the monolingual documents. So, all right, we'll open this one up. Okay, so this is your big job that you're about to launch, not that other one. All right.
Yeah.
So now you notice that the buttons are not active here, but the stupid Regex Assistant is still there. There's a few coordination issues that memoQ needs to work out sometimes, but hey, that's not so bad. All right, so here, our new project we just did. I want to see what potential trouble I can expect. Maybe I just need to add a couple of hello. Here we go. Okay, maybe I just needed to add a couple of new exceptions, and that will save me hours of, okay, so let's see, possible pre-period restrictions. What the hell, we'll just use this one, stick it in there, and we click this. Okay, now here it should, now this particular regex will show you places that may be correct, but may have problems in somebody else's rules. Okay, so this one, it was handled correctly here because of the non-breaking space, because the EU is really anal about using non-breaking spaces in the right places. But you see all those spots that are highlighted could potentially be an issue. Okay, but here in this one, here. You notice? Okay, there I see one spot that broke. Okay, but anyway, I have other regex in there that will show you that stuff. So you've got a couple of regexes that you can put in. In fact, let me just put a different one in. Let's clear our filter. Segmentation. Okay, so at end, at segment start, with left parenthetical structure bug. Let's see what's going on with that. Okay, right there, you see it. Okay, so I say, okay, now if I don't go through, and this is how many times? 2,625 times in this project. So that's just that one bug that is causing 2,625 extra segments in the project that the translators will have to deal with. Okay, it's but you can see it's mostly the same abbreviation as far as I can tell. Now, maybe as I scroll down further, I'll find other relevant. Let's see, let me drag it way down here. Okay, but you see it's mostly references to that journal that are causing the headache. There's probably a few others here. I've got some regex, so I could use the screen for that. But anyway, you get the idea. I've given you a library. you can install the library in your computer in a couple of minutes. And then with any documents you want, you can pre-screen before you start working and see where you may have a segmentation issue. Or if you want to go back and look at where these issues might have arisen and you just fixed it and moved on, some of the other regex will identify those spots. You can copy those segments, put them in a separate text file, import that like a document, and see if it segments correctly or not. And if it doesn't, you know, okay, that's where I need to do my homework. And then with the exercises that will be posted in the next week, you can either make the corrections, or you can ask me, all right, Kevin, what the hell do I do with this now? And, you know, that we can step through and show specifically how to correct that 1 or 2 or 5 issues. But anyway, as I say, my challenge for the last week has been to go beyond just offering a couple of fixed segmentation rule sets, which are always doomed to cover, you know, just a small portion of the colleagues that need improved everybody honestly needs improved segmentation. And while I have a lot of friends who work with German as a source language, it's like, what, 5% of the translators I know, and probably 1% of the translators in the world. So I was trying to come up with a general method that is not even memoQ specific, but a general method for you to identify where the problems exist with your current segmentation rules in whatever tool you use them in. Because, you know, this regex that I'm showing you, this will work in Trados. This will work in Phrase. This will work in WordFast. This will work in Cafe Trans. This will work in a whole bunch of tools out there. So if you got this memoQ library I just gave you, export the darn thing to an HTML file, or just copy and paste the regex from the XML with a text editor if you want. But you can make those nice looking HTML files with the tools that you got before. And then you can take that HTML file and copy and paste the relevant regex for segmentation and use it in Phrase, use it in Trados Studio, use it in whatever you want. And it will show you the places, or it will help you find the places where your segmentation may be bad. And so if you say, to hell with memoQ, I'm going to work in this, fine. But at least you know then what fix you need to do to your segmentation in that other environment. So what we have here now is the beginning of a toolkit which can work generally for anybody's CAT tool and to identify problematic segmentation and, you know, show you where you need to focus your efforts on fixing it. And as I said, this is a very new thing for me conceptually, but I think it's a concept that we can build on. And it will also provide a good basis for sharing and comparing the performance of segmentation in different environments. My hope is that if a lot of these improvements will transfer correctly via SRX, that I can share as much of this as possible with people who are using other platforms other than memoQ, so that when memoQ users like us, well, I don't translate anymore, but you still do. When memoQ users like us receive a job from Trados Studio or from Phrase or from some other environment, because we have been able to share this improved segmentation, we will have fewer problems. They will have fewer problems when we return the jobs because the segmentation will be correct. There will be fewer conflicts, and I think everybody will be happier. That was my objective, at least. Anyway, so let me take one quick look back at my things here and make sure I haven't left anything out. Okay. Current lesson status. Okay, we've seen what's there. Effects of the rules on test data. We looked at the comparison of German imported with 2 different sets of segmentation rules. Okay, we've seen the test data. It's there. Everybody can have it, whether you're in the course or not. And then the methods for identifying segmentation issues are this regex library, which, as I say, I'm I'm actually really fascinated by this, and I'm going to be putting a lot more time into this in the next week. So look for improved versions of this. Yeah. Comments about the current state of memoQ segmentation. Well, you know from your own work how often you fix this or don't, or get frustrated because you'd like to fix the segmentation, but you can't. So hopefully everybody's frustration will go down with this in the future. Okay, so that concludes the points that I wanted. Oh, hi. That I wanted to discuss today. Has anybody, I need to leave. Okay, yeah, great. There will be a recording of this session, by the way, available to everybody. Because I'm on holiday, and I'm not completely in control of my own schedule, except when my partner's at the beach. I hate the beach. Certainly in the daytime, the sunshine, it's awful, an awful place. I prefer to stay in this nice dark apartment. Anyway, so soon, maybe today, maybe tomorrow, maybe sometime over the weekend, but soon, this talk will be available in the course structure, probably public, available to everybody. Most of these things are, in some cases, I think they're not always open. I don't know how. I lose track sometimes of what's public and what's not, but most of it is public, most of the useful stuff at least. So you can go back and review these points. As I say, this regex library that I've created for identifying the problem places for segmentation will continue to be improved. And I'm going to work together with Marek Pavlich and some of my other gifted technical colleagues to get their ideas. In fact, Marek had a very good suggestion for retroactive looks at TMs to figure out where segmentation might have been changed. If any of you are inclined to go back and look at where the reviewers or the translators may have gone and fixed the segmentation. And there was one of the properties that had to do with I forget exactly what it's called, but there is a particular property that you can also find in the XLIF files in memoQ that can be a marker to indicate that segmentation was changed. It could also be a marker for other things, but if you're doing research and trying to get an idea for how much trouble somebody might have actually had with segmentation on a file, you could filter the TM, look at only the segments from that particular job, export those, do an analysis on them, and say, oh, yeah, looks like a lot of segmentation was changed. But anyway, as I say, this is a new approach. I hope it's going to be a useful one for people, and I hope it's something that leads to a lot more sharing and exchange and understanding between users of different platforms. Thanks a lot, everybody, for your attention this afternoon. If you've got any more questions, I can take them now. Anybody? Okay.
Thanks,
great.
Kevin. Just to say, I'll miss you next week because I'm going to the MET get together in.
Oh, damn! I wish
Italy.
I were. I've been a member quite.
You won't be going. No, you won't be going.
No,
That's a pity.
I think I forgot to join this year. Well, my life is quieting down a little bit, so I hope I can make it in the future.
Sure. Yeah,
that's what I mean. MET is one of my favorite organizations. They're really so well organized.
Yeah.
But the last time I went was ages ago in that little place north of Madrid. It was one I didn't even manage to make it when they came to Portugal, and they had my God, they had Lawrence, the professor from it's not at Waseda, it's one of the Japanese universities, who did AntConc. I mean, he's like one of my personal heroes in the translation world. I couldn't even make it up in my own country to see him.
Oh, well, that's a pity.
That was totally shameful. But yeah, hopefully I can make it to the next one or soon after. So thanks a lot, everybody. Right. This is going to be available. Please share the information, please, because segmentation is one of our biggest headaches. And I think that working together on this, I mean, what you're seeing today is my first cut at this. Okay. And I had to think about it a long time to get to that point. But I think when better minds like Marek's and others get applied to this, I think we can make a lot of progress in this area. And I think it's going to benefit everybody, the LSPs, the companies with their internal departments, and all of us as individuals. And it is in all of our interest to share this information, to share our improved segmentation sets, because what goes around comes around. If you don't share it, then don't complain when somebody sends you files with shitty segmentation. Okay, look into the SRX thing if this is your thing, and let's get this stuff out there and eliminate this so we can focus our energies on other things. Okay, this could be some low-hanging fruit for us to improve our working lives. So anyway, thanks a lot, everyone. You all have a
Thanks,
fantastic
Kevin. See you next time. Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.